Hello, Augies Worldwide. I'm Dave Casler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with another episode of Ask Dave. Our question today comes from KH60. Now, that's a Hawaiian call sign, but he says he's Jeff KH60 Portable 6. So he's in California rather than Hawaii. He has been sending me questions about solar panels versus batteries versus wind sources, and what it all comes down to is, can you connect in parallel batteries of different sizes, or if you have a battery, a single battery like the 100 amp hour battery that powers my solar station here, can you have multiple chargers for the thing? Okay, so I'm going to try and clear up some misconceptions on why you want to be a little careful with that, okay? Here we have a battery. Okay, doesn't matter if it's lead acid, lithium ion. You've got a plus terminal and a negative terminal. Okay, for most ham radio, it's 12 volts. There are a few cars with 24 volt batteries. There was a little bit of a movement in that direction a couple decades ago, but most of the car manufacturers backed off to 12. The idea with the 24 volt battery is if the voltage is higher, the current can be lower, so you don't need the real thick cables. But a starting motor, what drives it is current. This voltage is going to drop quite a bit, and it's going to put the maximum amount of current it can, because it's the current that starts the car. So starting batteries, like for cars, are labeled in cold cranking amps. That means how many amperes can it put out when cold, okay? Like whatever temperature they set it at, freezing or something below freezing, like 0 Fahrenheit. Of course, it does get even colder than that in parts of the United States. What people do if they live up way north is they put a block heater, it's usually a patch, that they put on the bottom oil pan, and that keeps the oil warm. And the warm oil circulates throughout this when you do the starting, and it's much easier to crank the car when you do that. I actually put one of these on my airplane engine because it gets just as cold in an unheated hangar as it does outside. And starting that thing in the cold was a challenge. Okay, I did put that heater in there. All right, now what we're going to look at, we've got, the first question is, can we charge a battery from multiple sources? Let's say we've got a solar panel here. Okay, and this goes through a charge controller, and I'll just call it the charge controller, a C, and then goes out to these wires right here, okay? Now this is what I have here. If you'll follow me, I'll show you. This right here is the current that comes in from the solar panel, okay? And this current comes in through this charge controller right here, which is a titch warm because it's been charging all day. It's quite sunny outside. This is what the battery gives me right here. This is 33.9 volts. That's the actual voltage that the panel is running at, and the current it is giving me is 0.7 amps. So the amount of power, multiply 33 by 7, and that will tell you how much power is actually coming into the station. Down here I've got a meter. I calibrated it at one point. It says milliamperes, but right there it's about 14.3 volts. And this is the charging current right here. Again, I put in my own scale. It's about half an amp going into there right now. Is about all that the thing wants. Now, lithium batteries have charge controllers. This charge controller, in this case, takes a 24 volt panel and converts it down to 14.6, which is the maximum charging voltage that you want on a lithium ion battery, the big lithium iron phosphate, PO. And it's the 4 is down here. So phosphate is phosphorus with oxygen bonded around it. It connects to the iron molecule and the lithium molecule. This is the current best practice for lithium-ion batteries, okay? And because of the chemistry, they're very, very, very much less likely to break out into flame as compared to some of the earlier batteries. Now, if that's what you've got here, and you've got some other charge source here, let's say a windmill, okay, and there's a controller for that, which would also be 14.6 to charge, you're going to have a problem with the battery management system trying to keep track of which one is charging. If the voltage in here goes up just a tiny bit, it'll suddenly start handling all the load because the voltage here is less. And so if you've got 14.6 volts coming out of one, 14.5 coming out of the other, and they are fixed voltage sources, you're going to draw your current from this one and only kind of make up some of the current out of this one if the battery voltage drops a little bit, okay? Better is to have a single charge controller, and they do make these, a single charge controller that can take solar, wind, the AC mains, and then you can set it up to only use this if something goes wrong here, and then you've got your sink, your power sink here. Not the kitchen sink, power sink. And this charge controller will do all of the balancing here so that they all contribute. Like the battery that I have, C/10 is the usual rule of thumb for charging a battery. That's the capacity, which is 100 amp hours over 10 amps. It'll take 10 hours to charge the battery fully. Some lithium batteries can take a higher charge rate, okay? This is kind of a leftover from the lead acid. Now, if you're still running lead acid batteries, like you might be in your RV or something like that, the lead acid battery has a very different charge profile. You take it from whatever voltage it's at, okay? And so a rested, fully charged 12-volt battery is 12.7 volts. A half-depleted 12-volt battery is at 12.0 volts, and this is where you want to keep it. If you start going down, it'll go down to 11 or whatever. You're starting to actually damage the battery. So you got to keep it in this range. So your charge controller, this is voltage, and this is time. The voltage gradually goes up until it hits 14.4, and then it holds it steady. This is the bulk charge. Bulk charge. This is the absorption, and yes, it's absorption and not absorption. Absorption is not a word. Okay, and it holds it out here till it gets, so what's happening here, you're putting a steady number of amps in here. The voltage will rise. Here, you're keeping a constant voltage. The current will fall, and when it falls to a certain point, it will stop charging, and then it will trickle charge at 13.3 volts. And that goes out forever, okay? That will keep it fully charged. Now, if you draw power out of it at any point in this curve, it'll move back into the appropriate point. You can see that battery charging devices for lead acid are much more complex. You can also see why you don't use that to charge a lithium battery, nor do you use a lithium battery controller to charge a lead acid, because it's 14.6 volts, which is too high for these things. When you get this above 14.4 volts, you start something called gassing. The electrolyte starts to boil and gives off hydrogen gas, which is quite flammable, and it will vent into the room. Now, if you've got a sealed battery, it's 14.1 volts. But you want to stay away from the gassing point. If you have flooded lead acid batteries, every month or so, you want to let it run all the way up to about 15 volts, or maybe a little more. That'll really start the gassing. And with the gassing, what that bubbling does inside the electrolyte is mix it. Because otherwise you tend to get levels of different concentrations and become more concentrated with acid down low and less so up toward the top. But this will bubble it, that will mix the electrolyte. You do not ever do that, ever, with a lithium-ion battery. Okay, the way batteries are constructed, you've got two plates. And in lead acid, they're both lead, by the way. And you've got the sulfuric acid in here. Now, absorbed glass mat batteries put a glass mat in here so the electrolyte doesn't move. It doesn't stratify like it does in the flooded lead acid batteries. Now, by the way, after you equalize, you need to top off these cells with distilled water so you get them back up, because that does release the hydrogen. The hydrogen comes from somewhere, and it comes from the hydrogen sulfide. That's the H2SO4, which is the sulfuric acid. Okay. By the way, a lead acid battery can go down to about minus 10 to 20 below zero and still hold some charge. But if it's fully discharged, the sulfur has attached itself to one of the plates, and what's in here is pure water. And so at 32 degrees, this will happily freeze on you. And in so doing, will ruin the battery. Now, lithium-ion batteries are not known for their performance in cold weather. And so some of the batteries actually have built-in heaters. And yes, that uses the battery power. So you need some constant charge. So like in my RV has lead acid battery. But the lithium-ion batteries are not good starting batteries. Remember, it was all down to the current. The lead acid can give you extremely high currents. By the way, if you drop a wrench across the terminals, do not try this. It will melt and boil the steel, which means you could get really splattered with some very hot stuff, which could seriously injure you. These batteries have a battery management system in there that manages equal charges across cells and depth of discharge and all that sort of thing. And when you get fully charged, this thing will reject any further charging. The terminals may be at 14.6, but it won't be drawing very much. And you see that here on this right here, we've got less than an amp from a solar panel that's capable of 7 amps at the 33 volts. Okay, so anyway, that's about batteries. Now let's try looking at batteries in parallel. I'm now looking down. This is a plan view. So here's the top, and you've got another one here, the top, and let's suppose you want to run these in parallel. Okay, you can take batteries and loop them together like this, okay, in parallel. And that goes out too, all right? Here's your two leads, your positive and negative. By the way, I want to warn you about something. It's very common to there's a small resistance in here, and the charging system measures the voltage across that small resistance. This has to be negative with respect to the system ground, okay, whatever the ground is right here. So don't connect the negative side to your chassis, okay, because the charge controller needs this to be just slightly negative, because otherwise you'll short this out, it gets 0 volts, and so it's going to try cramming all the current in there it can. You can do these with either lead acid, lithium-ion batteries if they're the same size. Okay, same size. And with lead acid, it will equalize the voltage, okay, your voltage charging here. Now, if these are lithium-ion, it will be the battery management system, which are designed to be aware that there might be other battery management systems on the line, and that works to keep these at an equal charge. So these need to be of equal size, okay? Equal size, like 100 amp hour, 100 amp hour, 100 amp hour, all right? And yes, there is a school of thought that you should pull these out to a common point where all these have the same length and so on, but I wouldn't worry about that, okay? So I used to have 4 large lead acid batteries. They were sealed AGM batteries that I used for my solar system. And I had them in series parallel, and it worked fantastically for 15 years. But what happened was some of the Chinese battery manufacturers sent me some lead acid batteries, 100 amp hours each. I got 2 from the same manufacturer and 1 from a third, which I think is the one under test right now. And I'm doing a year-long test to see if I can note any differences in them. I'm going to take the 2 Golden Mate batteries that I have, connect them in parallel, put them out in my RV, but I'm going to have to change the charge controller to lithium-ion, unless there's a switch on it somewhere that'll make it lithium-ion. I kind of doubt it because that charge controller is 6 years old, and lithium weren't quite as popular back then. They really are a relatively recent phenomenon. Okay, so if you've got multiple charge sources, bring them to a charge controller that is capable of handling multiple sources. You can go, MFJ had one, West Mountain Radio has one. You can call DX Engineering for the Power Gate. The Power Gate is a device that will take solar, come out to your battery. You can bring other sources into it, and it'll keep that battery fully charged, and it will keep it from overcharging that battery or overusing one of the sources. For example, the wind can blow at night perfectly happily, and solar panels only work during the day, so you can see there's a bit of a marriage between the two. And a lot of times when you travel like north of Las Vegas, you really see this. Thousands of acres full of solar panels, but sprinkled among them are windmills. There's also sprinkled among them battery houses. So what these do is when they have excess power, they charge the batteries. When they don't have enough power to meet their contractual commitments, what they will do is draw from the batteries, draw the batteries down, and then recharge them the next day or the next windstorm, whichever comes first. By the way, I just want to point out, China's had an interesting result. It has gone out in the Gobi Desert, just like we've gone out in the Mojave Desert, and they have put in very large solar panel arrays, huge solar panel arrays. And what they've discovered is they changed the climate. The ground is cooler because you've taken 30 to 40% of the energy out of the sun before it gets to the ground, plus the ground is shaded. So they've found the plant biome changes. Grass can grow. They can graze animals under these things. In fact, if they raise up the solar panels to about 8 feet, you can run sheep under there. Or you can grow the kind of vegetables that don't mind a little bit of shade. A lot of things you can do with the synergy between these. So anyway, I hope that answers your question about this, Jeff. And good luck. If you'd like to know more, let me know in the comments. So Jeff KH60 Portable 6 in California. Have a great day, and until we next meet, 73.